this week's episode of Pickles and Pasta with
Steph.
and Jay. We're coming to you live from New York City, home sweet home-ish, and we are now on episode 11, which is amazing. We really weren't sure we were going to get past one or two, so thank you for joining in on this journey and encouraging us and all the lovely comments and likes. We really appreciate it. Keep them coming. And I think we may have mentioned this before, but if there's a topic that you think would be interesting, that you think we have any knowledge about, or anything you've heard or seen, or just anything like that, we're more than happy to kind of think about it and see if it applies and how we can add value. Our whole mission in doing this is to kind of share some of our experiences in the hope that some of you can benefit from it and can help you in some way or another in your daily routine or daily life or whatever it is that's going on in your world. So yeah, we're happy to see how we can be more helpful. What do you think, Steph?
Absolutely. That's really why we're doing this. To share some of our experiences in the hope that people can hear a little bit of themselves in what we are talking about. And maybe it gives some people, some ideas about how to handle things, or maybe it eases some burden that they're carrying by thinking they're the only ones out there going through something. So it's kind of the reason why I want to do this with you.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, we're really enjoying this weather, which I'm going to throw out there. I know we've talked about weather in the past, and I feel like I'm jinxing the shit out of this, but it's been pretty good. I'm enjoying every last bit of it. So it's really a lovely day here in the city, and I hope it's lovely wherever you guys are. So I think I'm going to jump right in into some of what we've got cooking, or what we wanted to kind of share with you guys this week. And for those of you who it's your first time here, welcome to the party. We start off with some topics that we come up with, things that are relevant, that have either come up, over the course of the week, or or keep coming in and out, that we feel are they're affecting us in some way or another. And that's kind of our whole idea here, is like things that happen in the universe, and both of us being creatives, even though we're slightly different, like what Steph does as a creative and actually creating products and visuals and art and beautiful things like that, and me creating from helping to organize and facilitate and connect things and all that sort of stuff. Both creative, but different type of creative stuff that goes on in the universe or in our personal realities of our lives, that affects our work. And so we kind of try to share those things. So one of the topics that's come up, and also people bring it up in conversations we have with them, is fear, general fear, and how that kind of affects our lives, and how it affects, the chances that we take, and all the different things that we do, and what kind of fear is like rational, like there's a good reason to have fear, and what is kind of somewhat self-imposed, like we just have it for some reason, and we kind of have to deal with that. So I don't know, Steph, do you have kind of any thoughts?
Yeah, I know this is something that I have talked about a lot. And, I have dealt with the concept of fear in my life, whether it's a situation that you came up against and something didn't turn out the way you wanted it to, and it kind of sent you into a strange situation, for example. That would be a fear that kind of came up out of a situation. And then sometimes I think we have a problem where we internalize that, and that becomes like part of our PTSD, or that becomes a pattern in navigating life. And I think you really need to have self-awareness around the whole concept of fear. Like, fear initially developed as a human emotion to keep us safe. But, over time, fear, when you're afraid of the future, that's considered anxiety. And I think that so many people in the world today are affected by anxiety because there's so much fear-based mentality in our world. And a lot of that is coming through in social media, in the news, and we can't seem to get away from all of this fear based information. And it's really feeding our bodies and our minds. And, when you internalize this feeling, you're really affecting your cortisol level. So this is not only affecting people from a mental standpoint, but it's holding people back from doing certain things in life, for going after certain opportunities. And it's actually affecting people's like physical health because, when cortisol, which is your stress hormone, is never kind of relaxed, it's always at this heightened level, it really affects, your physicality, your health. And, recently I was thinking of a recent situation where I experienced fear. And just recently, I announced that I was going to be having these art workshops. And as I did all the work, I created the program, I really spent a lot of time digging into what I could offer people and how that would be a fun thing to do, not just for me, but for people who are interested in getting creative.
If
So
you
I
haven't
created
signed
this.
up yet, boys and girls, giddy up. Sign up for
Well,
Steph's art classes. The first one's sold out, but there's got two more to go, and you can do it. Come to Pennsylvania, come do it live, do it virtual, just do it. Bring your boots, bring your whatever. Just
well, thank you,
come on
Jay.
down.
But like when I first sent out that email, I'm going to be really honest. My thought went through my head: what if nobody signs up? And it was like this thought
I
that
would have
was,
signed up. If nobody signed up, I would have signed
well, I'm just saying, like that was a fearful thought that
up.
went through my body.
I remember.
And and then like I just was like, okay, well if nobody signs up, then maybe they'll sign up for the second one. Like I didn't allow it to stop me. I think that's the point that I'm really trying to make. I think a lot of people, have these fearful things that might hold them back from trying things. And I think one of the best ways to combat that thinking is to just do it anyway. Like make the call, send the proposal, create the event, and you just have to have more faith. And I think having that faith pushes out the fear. And literally the next day, I had one person sign up for all of them. And then a few days later, I had another person sign up for all of them. And just last week, I had another person who's going to be driving from Philadelphia to come take the classes. And, still hearing from people who want to sign up. So, I just think it's a good lesson to you can feel the fear, but don't let it consume you and overtake your decisions.
When you're talking about fear, you're talking about like fear as opposed to nervousness.
No, I'm talking about fear.
Actual fear, right? So not just
Yeah.
nerves or
Like
butterflies,
fear of
whatever. But
failure. Fear of failure,
yeah,
basically, which is a legitimate fear that a lot of people have that do things. I
so
think the more things you do, the more chances of failure you have, but also the more chances of success you actually have.
yeah. I mean, you can't lose if you don't play, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Hmm.
you also can't win. So yeah, no, that's a fair assessment. I mean, but it doesn't really get in the way. Like I think yeah, there's certainly people that just are consumed with fear, and they can come up with every reason in the world why something's not going to work, and they can really get themselves worked out. You can see the body tension, you can hear it in their voice, you can see it, and even if they're sending an email, you can tell if they're scared. But I think I guess the tricky part or the key is finding one's own balance. How do you get through it? Like, what do you do to overcome fear? Like, do you and how early does it come in? If it comes in so early in the game that you don't even start, or does it come in the middle and you're second guessing yourself? Like, oh, what if it doesn't work? Like, I think the way you're talking about is like you're talking about legitimate fear, and that can be really debilitating. It's definitely a tricky place to be, but I think really when you realize that, you know, the worst thing that happens is that it doesn't work out. Like, it's not like, fear of having to go fight a bear.
Yeah. There's different,
It's a bit different.
yeah, there are totally different degrees of it. And I mean, I'm not saying that it has stopped me from doing things in life, but it's a component in the process because you don't just go blindly into a project. I mean, you do your research, you see what it's going to take, financially or, organizationally or logistically. I mean, there's so many components to doing things in a business or entrepreneurial sense. It's really more around fear of failure. But then there are so many other types of fear. I mean, there is true fear of safety. And fortunately, I really I really haven't experienced like fear for my physical safety. And, that's a whole other animal. But I have done like some research into how I cope with my, my fears around success and failure. And it's like really looking at it and looking at, well, what would be the worst case scenario if the worst thing happened, and what kind of position would that put me in? Would I be destitute? So you have to, I think, go through, real rational questions to kind of put any fears that you have about moving forward with something to rest. So it is a process of really taking a look at all the components of something.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it, I think, is if you do your homework, if you kind of lay down the groundwork, if you really do the things that you're working towards, you can kind of battle through the fear a little bit easier. If you
Yeah.
don't do that, yeah, then you can have those fears, and the fear can be anything. I mean, the fear can stop you from going to a conference or to an event or to a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Fear can kind of play into all sorts of different things. So yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that I have the absolute answer, but I think, and I don't think just tough it out is just necessarily always the best answer. I think it's kind of a little off the cuff sort of thing that people say. But I think if you take a step back and you're just like, okay, let me make sure, have I covered myself as best I can, and kind of flip it a little bit to be like, I can do this. I don't have to be afraid of this. I'm going to go through it. If it doesn't work, I'm okay. And I know how I'm going to handle it. So yeah, I think we all deal with it. I think, even the toughest of the tough out there have some sort of something that they're afraid of, or something that affects them in some way. So yeah, I think it's part of the journey. And I think if you're entrepreneurial, you're going to run into it all the time, because there's really no safety net. No matter how
Yeah.
successful you are, there's just no safety net as an entrepreneur. So yeah, interesting. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I think you do. I've definitely experienced it with you, where you have certain fears around certain things, but somehow you maybe have your moment, but then you're like, okay, let's think about it, let's try to be logical about it. I think if you can use that, I think that can definitely help.
Absolutely. And I think also right now, I think there's a little fear in in the world right now, and that's a different kind of fear.
Yeah,
You know,
that's a very different kind of fear. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The fear of not knowing what tomorrow will bring. Will we be here? Or there's a whole world going to explode and blah blah blah. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other kind of fear. And I mean, that's probably a separate. That's probably an episode all onto itself. Uh,
yeah.
but like how the fear of what's going on the planet, affects our daily life, how we function, and it is. I mean, yeah, I hear you. Definitely something for us to put on our list to talk about, but I think it's different than what we're talking about right here. So yeah, but it's valid. I think it's real. I think it's very real, and I think the only thing I'll say to that before moving on is I think it's okay. I think it's natural right now. It's understandable that some people may have that. And it's okay to take that, but then also do what you can to kind of take a break, take a minute, take whatever time you need, ground yourself a little bit so that you can actually go function, because living in that place of fear, it's just not going to help you or your loved ones or anybody. So
Yeah. It's just going to make you spiral, and you're
yeah,
not going to be able to accomplish really what you want to accomplish.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So kind of semi-connected or whatever, moving on to the next one, is the topic of truth and what truth even means today. Like there was truth as we knew it, right? Like we knew if so and so said something, or if I read this in this place or whatever, that was the truth. Like I know that's the truth. And now it's kind of like, what is the truth? I think we're definitely in this like weird place in society that things that we used to totally rely on as like, okay, that if I read that here, or if that person or someone from that group of people says this, that is the truth. And now it's kind of like not so sure.
Yeah, I think the whole concept of truth is changing, especially because of like let's look at it. First, it was like classic, so it was like facts and reality. You saw it, and so when you saw something happen, like that was real, that was the truth. And now it's different because there are algorithms and there's perspective, and so the truth is really kind of depending on your perspective, that's the truth. And I think like what's emerging is that really, I think we need to have more transparency in what is labeled true. How did you come to determine this is true? What were the parameters? Are we taking into account the algorithm? Are we taking into account perspective? It's just like I think we need to like show how did we arrive that at this conclusion that this is true. And I think that there needs to be a little more transparency so that we can agree, okay, this is true, no matter what side of a situation you're looking at it. I think there should be some way of saying, okay, let's look at all the criteria and let's arrive. What is the truth here?
Yeah, I mean, sure. And there are people that are working on that, and I've spoken to different people that are working on, how do you measure truth and what type of verification processes need to be in place and all this sort of stuff. The unfortunate reality is people see something on the internet and they say, well, I saw it on the internet, it must be true. And people say that with a straight face, and I'm laughing, I'm peeing in my pants laughing. Like it's like you can't really. That's not what you're saying. I mean, you can't honestly be saying that. Well, I saw it on the internet, therefore it's true. So I think it's a very interesting place we're in as a society, because people are saying things, or people are doctoring up photos, or people are just writing op-ed pieces, or being on the news, and or politicians or whatever, and people are like, well, they said it must be true. And it's like, but what's the backup for that truth? Like,
Yeah.
where is the science behind it, or where is the what sort of proof do we have that it's true? And then there's the domino of that, right? Or there's the after effect of that. Like someone says that's true, therefore they act a certain way, they behave a certain way. It could be, listen, it could be the most. I mean, this thing with the weather thing, I can't believe the weather keeps coming up. I'm going to have to do a deep dive why weather always comes up. Just
For
saying,
you.
well, it affects you too. Like, but it's like if you look at your weather app and it tells you it's 70 degrees, or it tells you it's 50 degrees,
Oh,
you go
yeah.
outside and you're like, it doesn't feel like 50 degrees. You're like, but that's the
Yeah.
truth.
Yeah. Actually,
That's the truth. That's happened to us. It's happened to both of us. You're like, it's not supposed to rain. You go outside and you had an outfit on that was like appropriate to not get rained on, and you got
right.
rained on.
Yeah.
So
That is a good example because how can you rely on what you're reading as the weather when you experience it and it's continuously not what it
right.
says, then you're like, well, what is true?
And then you go from
That's
not
kind
knowing
of
what's true
what's
to losing trust,
yeah,
right?
and
It's
that's
connected.
happening across the board, almost in every sphere that I know of.
Yeah, and that is the tricky part, and that's you if you don't know what to trust and you don't know what's true, how do you function? Like, how do you create things? How do you and look, that's the promise of blockchain, which is a whole separate subject. But that verification process where there's, okay, absolute is absolute. Like, yes, this person owns this IP. yes, this is how this event is going to happen. This triggers the funds get released. Like there are things that are there are people that are working on that, but it's a heavy lift to kind of get people to kind of move to that place of verification and trust and how we function as a society. It's a big thing. I mean, it's cyber is a big thing and security is a big thing, but this is really a big thing as we move forward with all the technology that's in our lives.
But here's the question: what if people don't want the truth out there?
Well, so there's an not new news, but the, let's take this as a hypothetical example. But let's assume government X for country wherever is purely 100% honest. Like everything they do is above board. I know it's laughable. Everybody calm down. Let's assume that entity exists. Even with that, there's a large percentage of things that they do on a daily basis, or there are large things that happen on a daily basis, they make sure you don't ever know about. And the reason they make sure you don't ever know about it is because you would absolutely pee yourself if you knew all the stuff that's really going on in the universe. I'm not saying that to be depressing or negative. That's not
That leads into the back to the fear conversation.
right, but it's just an absolute reality that there's just too many things that happen in the universe right now. It's not like it was, even 100 years ago that people lived in their small little town and everything that they knew was in that little place and that was fine and they didn't go anywhere. And if something happened on the other side of the world, they had to wait for the paper to come. But it's not like that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's on a daily basis, I mean, okay. So yesterday afternoon ish or something, a transformer in the neighborhood blew or something shorted or whatever, and there was a power outage in our block or in our area. I don't know how far it extended. It may have just been our block, but basically our block had a power situation. We were very, very, very lucky. We're very grateful. We had a little bit of intermittent, like the light in one room didn't go as high as it's supposed to. The microwave didn't work at full capacity. Ooh, like no big deal. And the elevators didn't work. Big fucking deal. Like nothing
All
major.
right, you're forgetting that my bath water was not hot
I
enough.
was getting to the bathwater. Relax. The bad thing is Steph's bath was a little bit lukewarm last night. Not a good thing. But in the grand scheme of things, okay, it wasn't really that bad. I guarantee
No,
you,
not at all.
I guarantee you that aside from us, there isn't anybody that knows about what happened. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that they don't let news like that get all over the place because then someone 5 blocks away is panicking about, I'm going to lose my electricity. And the other person says, oh my God, I'm going to lose my electricity. Like, oh my God. And so it creates panic when people hear these things if they don't understand how to process it. And unfortunately, not everybody knows how to process massive amounts of information. So
Especially stuff that makes them afraid.
yes, this is true. But part of that is when you get an overload of information, your brain just can short circuit in a way, right? It's just too many things going on, and it makes it easier to panic, to get nervous. That's just the way it is. When you have too many things, we all have it. Like when we have 20 things going on, and we run out the house, we might have forgotten something, or we trip, or we bump into somebody. When we only have 3 things going on, those things probably don't happen. So I'm bringing this up in a way because, like, it's not truth that you don't know everything, but it is not truth when you're told something that just is false. Like when people not us boys and girls, but there's people on podcasts that say really heinous things, that say really hurtful things, that say really racist things, that say sexual things, political things that are just wrong. They're false. Like they're false, false, false. And some of those people have millions of followers, and there's just so much of that. And I think working together and being open and honest with each other, like if someone tells me something that's just not true, like a friend or a colleague, and I do know the truth, it's not on me to be a jerk to them about it. It's on me to commit, like, well, wait, let me show you some information I have. Let me help you find the real truth. And, then I think we can kind of get to a better place when people start to understand how to measure truth. Then I think it can might make this a little bit better.
So I have a question. Like, I know for me, when I'm like reading something that I'm interested in, and they're disseminating facts, and I really want to make sure that those facts are true. What do you do to verify that you wouldn't spread something that isn't true, and you're finding out if what you're hearing is true? Like, how do you verify? What's
Yeah.
your method?
So it's a problem, unfortunately. It's a problem for a lot of reasons. And people are naturally, and I'm sure people listening to this are saying, well, just chat GPT it or Claude it or Perplexity it or whatever. Like just go, Gemini will tell you, whoever will tell you. And the reality is that's not necessarily the perfect baseline because those tools are scouring and scraping the internet and looking for,
Yeah, it's just for the internet. That's what they're looking
well, they're
for.
scraping to find what they, all the information, and then they're doing
Hmm.
probability analysis and stuff like that. So if somebody is purposely trying to push a lie and they have the ability through resources to get 200,000 articles written, and the person who's got the truth only has the ability to get 100 articles written, there's a problem because how is it going to find that? So I think truth has to be a combination of technology and verification and 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 an analysis, and a friend of ours was working on something like this, and not surprisingly had a hard time getting this project funded because people were like, well, what about our
We
version?
don't need the truth.
We don't want the truth. We want to push our version of the truth. And ultimately he had to kind of, pause that project. But they had this idea of like a verification process, right? So like, let's say whatever, Bob Jones writes an article and it's verified and 20 people say, yeah, I know this. I know I was there. I know the story. That's totally true. And so that article gets a certain upvoting. And Bob
Hmm.
Jones writes 200 more articles. And if of the
Hmm.
200 articles, his his truth score or whatever score you give it by various different people is 83%.
Hmm.
So 83% of what he writes, people have verified, authenticated is true. And then, whatever, Cassandra Williams, her score is 22%. Well, before you read it, nobody's telling you not to read it. You want to read it. But know going in that only 23% of the time is she accurate. She's been verified by different people to be like, well, no, I was at that event and that didn't happen. That
Hmm.
band didn't play a 2 hour set, they played a 1 hour set. Like real, actual things where you could say that's an actual human. That person was actually, we know the person is there, multiple checkpoints. The technology is getting better and better every day, every minute, that those types of mechanisms will be possible.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
in
sorry.
time, sorry, no, in time we'll be able to get there. I think right now, you know, you and I, we talked about this. I mean, there's words that I've eliminated from my vocabulary long before any of the stuff that's going on now. I don't use the word normal. I don't use the phrase common sense. I don't use the word busy. Like there's things I just don't use because it's just the truth. Like my common sense is not somebody else's common sense. It's not we're right or wrong. It's just it's not the same. So how can we say, well, it's common sense, not to,
Yeah, that's true.
so but I think in time, if there's enough people working on it, I personally know people that are working on how to verify on a security basis. So you can certainly do various ways to kind of verify things. I
Hmm.
think that can come into play, and then it doesn't mean there's not going to still be bad players and they're going to try to trick the system. But I think we'll be able to get to a place in time that the technology will get ahead of it, and if humans also do their part to help the technology, then I think we'll be able to get to that place. I mean, I'm optimistic that we'll get there.
Yeah, and I would also add for anybody who is super quick to share information that you haven't at least tried to verify, I would I would recommend you take a second look at that. I mean, honestly, whenever I read anything on social media or any other type of platform that's like, that's interesting. I wonder if that's true. Like, that's my go to. Like, I really don't trust most things I read until I've actually verified it somehow. And often I will throw it into Chat GPT. Hey, I just heard this. Is this true? Now I know that they could give you wrong answers. I know that. But quite often I will get the response back, I cannot verify that from a reputable source. Like that's an answer I get from them.
Yeah.
Which is
Which is good. I
that's
think
that's
that's a great
that's
answer.
something.
That's a
So
great answer. Yeah.
I'm not gonna share something like that when I get that kind of an answer. And I think so many people, it would just cut down on some of this angsty atmosphere if people would just really realize that not everything that is written and printed is true.
Yeah. That is most certainly true. That's unfortunately, that's most certainly true. And yeah, I was. I mean, I'll finish off with this, and we can move on to the next one. But it hit me the other day. There's a guy. I'm not going to name names, but there's a guy that is just a vile, really disgusting, a really just
You don't like him, whoever this person is.
he's just really low life scum of the earth person who's really, really, really popular and has a lot of followers. It's really, really. I mean, he is just bad news on every possible level. And he wrote an op-ed piece that got in the New York Times. He wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times. Like, now, granted, the New York Times is not what the New York Times was. I'm not going to get into that right now, but that's reality right now in the world we live in, and hopefully it'll become whatever something better in the future. So, and it just hit me like, wait a second, who the hell is this guy? Like, forget about the fact that I don't like him. Put that aside for a second. It doesn't matter. He's not a journalist. Okay, he's not a professor. He's not a politician. He's not a scientist. He's not a nothing. He's not that
He's an influencer.
kind of.
I mean, when I say influencer, it just means he's
He's
clearly
somebody who's on social
influencing
media.
people.
Yeah, he's someone who has social media who has a lot of people that follow him, and he says a lot of stuff, and they whatever. So technically, I guess he's an influencer. I don't know what he thinks he is, but he's famous. He's been in whatever. But he is not an expert. He's just not. Like he's just not. Just isn't. Period. No gray area. If you think back, even maybe 5 or 10 years ago, to get an article, even an op-ed in a publication, quote unquote, reputable publication like the New York Times, you had to be one of those people, right? Like there were the writers that were vetted, the journalists that were journalists, whatever the publication is around the world. They had to go through school, they had to go through training, they had to really do a lot of work, they had to really prove that they were good and be reliable sources. And then there'd be an op ed, which would be someone who is an expert that has a different opinion than the general editorial of that publication. That's fair to show the other side. They're like, hey, this is what we say. This is our view and the way we do journalism as this newspaper. And here's someone who has an opposing view, and we're going to give them the respect as an expert in this field to do that. That makes sense. How the hell do we just let any bozo, just get into those sort of things? And I think that's where this plays with the truth because someone's going to read it, guaranteed since that op-ed thing, he's been quoted as seen in the New York Times. Blah, blah, blah says blah, blah, blah as seen in the New York Times, which he now becomes even more credible to someone who doesn't do research and doesn't check it out. And that's the danger because
But that's happening
it's happening across the board.
all over the
Yeah,
place,
yeah,
which is eroding what we call the truth,
yeah,
and which is causing more fear.
yeah. So you've heard it here. We've said it. This is going to be on the internet. Therefore, it's true. Um, so our next and final topic of this week's show
To
is,
brighten things up.
I mean, we could talk about cupcakes and dandelions if you want instead, but that's not the topic. The topic is advice to our younger selves. If you could sit down with your 20 something or so person, what would you say to them that, you know, I don't know.
Hmm.
Kind of
What can I say that won't get me in trouble?
babe, I think the ship sailed on getting in trouble. I think I'm probably more in the shit house than you are, but yeah.
What advice would I give my younger self? Well, let's start with relationships. Um, I was under this impression that everything was going to work out when I was 23 years old. And I kind of just trusted. I trusted everything was going to work out. So very different than I am today after living, 40 years in between all that. And I think the advice I would give my younger self when it comes to relationships is find someone who you respect intellectually as well as just as the person that they are, and look for someone who is your best friend. So that would be advice I would give a younger person. It's actually interesting. I was at a dinner last night. I helped organize a dinner with a young woman who is my daughter's age and my daughter Allegra's age. They're actually very good friends in high school. And Emily lives here now in the city. And we had been talking about, she's this very cool girl. She has a podcast. It's called What Fulfills You. Giving you a plug there, Emily Duong. And we wanted to have this dinner where we brought different age groups of women together to kind of inspire each other. Like, I love learning from young people. I love my daughter's friends. I love my daughters. I love my nieces. And that whole demographic of these young people and how they think is very interesting to me because of what I do as an artist, as a designer. I think it's very important to be in touch with, all different age groups. And so we had this dinner last night, and there was another woman there who was about my age, Heidi. She has her own PR firm, and her daughter who just graduated from college. So Lena's, the youngest one of all of us. And then there was Emily, and then another woman named April, who is also in her 20s. So there's basically 20s, 50s, and 60s. And it was just a really interesting thing how these young women wanted to hear how we do things and what advice we would have for them. And it was like a really beautiful exchange of wanting to know what we thought and what worked and really what didn't. And and so I really think that as a young person today, you have to really lean into your authenticity. And I think this is not something that, this is out there. Like, this is something that everybody's talking about, authenticity, and has been for many years, but it's really true. I think you have to stop comparing your life to anybody else's because I see so much of that. And I remember doing that as a young person. And I think that is just such a waste of energy. Everybody's life is different, and comparing yourself is really just, it's selling yourself short. So I would like lean into believing in yourself, even if it's delusional, because, going in with this confidence, your personality is going to be more important than your actual talent. And so I think leaning into developing your personality and your confidence and your self-esteem is going to have so much more value than, maybe even being the best at what you do.
So your advice would be to, so on the relationship side, be with somebody that you can respect and trust and have faith in and lean on and grow together.
Yeah, I think going after the wrong things in a relationship and just trusting that just because someone, wants to marry you or wants to go out with you doesn't mean it's the right thing for you. I think you really need to ask yourself, can I put my confidence in this person?
Yeah, that's fair. And from a personality perspective, you're saying work on your personality from a overall growth. Work on your personality. Don't more. The skills are important, but more make yourself the best you can be, and then you can learn other things from that.
Yeah, because I think you really need like a Teflon coating in today's society. You know, we have corporate America. I'm sorry.
That's sad. I think that's sad.
It is sad. I mean, it is sad. Unfortunately, it is sad. You know, there's a lot of kids who are graduating college who are not getting jobs. And it used to be where they weren't getting jobs like for the little interim since they graduated, but now that's extending longer and longer. And I think we really need to relook at our young people and what opportunities they really have and what it is doing to our society to have this whole fear around, you know, having a job that where you can have health insurance and you can make a life and you can buy a house. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that our young people are facing. And I think if they can develop their personality and their confidence, I think that that is the best way to navigate this climate.
Yeah, I think that's all very very good advice. I don't know that I would have much advice to give to my younger self, but yeah, I mean, I think it's not as easy to kind of see what tomorrow is going to bring, and I think doing your best to kind of look forward to see where the world may be going, keeping your eyes open and not be so close minded and think you know everything, which everybody of course thinks they do, especially when they're young. But also being open to experience things, you know, enjoy the moment, be free. You know, I think people go too quickly into things and they kind of get affected by that in a negative way. They feel this is the only way to do this or this is the only way to do that. And they don't explore as much as they could. And I think if you have opportunities to be able to try different things, you know, when you're older, it's not as easy. If you end up having, if that's your path, if that's your journey is to have a family, it's not so easy to just pick up and go when you have a family, you know. So I think learning as much as you can. I think, you know, not going into something because that's the way everybody else does it. You know, well, everybody else went to school, so I have to go to school. Everybody went to this place, so I have to go to this place. Like, I mean, that's okay if that's what you want to do, but it's not the only way. You know, there's a lot of
Right.
ways to do things, and the person you are today may not be the person you're going to be in 5 years. And you know, you have to look at these things differently. I think, you know, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean the other thing that I would say also is like giving advice about like your health. You know, it's so interesting to see how many young people, you know, they turn, you know, they graduate school, whether it's high school or, you know, college or trade school, whatever it is. And they're kind of still in that, like, that going out youthful mindset. You know, a lot of kids I know, I mean, I went to college and, you know, the scene in college is, you know, you party a lot, you know, and as you kind of get into like work life, you're transitioning from this space where, like, in your free time, you were drinking tons of alcohol and then eating crappy food because that was like this cycle of partying that was so common in college. You know, and then you get into real life and you realize, well, I can't live like that and be a healthy person. And so you slowly start to incorporate actually healthy habits. And I find it, you know, as an older person watching these younger people go through these cycles and, you know, seeing how hard it is to figure out how to actually be healthy then once you kind of get past all that. And I just wish I could have said to my younger self, you know, you're not going to want to live this way of like partying like crazy, eating all this unhealthy food, not really working out. I wish I had started my health journey sooner. So I would probably give advice around that.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think, you know, people's bodies change too, right? Like there's certain ages that your body just changes. Like, you know, and everybody's a little bit different, but there's certain benchmarks that you could say averages are. And like at 25, your body changes. And at another site that's another part, some people it's 30, some it's 35, your body changes. And so if you have no preparation for what's coming, and you have no idea, and you think you're going to still be able to do the things you do. And it's not. I don't think it's just only the biology of your body changes, but your life changes too, right? So if you're younger and you're more active, whether you play sports or whether you're running around in your job or in your personal life, whatever, and then you're sitting at a desk all the time, or you're working, in a factory, whatever it is you're doing, where you're staying more stationary, you're not as active anymore. Things start to change, and then if you don't pay attention to your health, it can kind of get pretty. It can get pretty ugly pretty fast.
Oh
So,
yeah.
and
I
it's
mean, I remember
it's harder to change than if you just build in the right building. Put the right steps in the beginning.
when I had my children in my early 30s. I was 31 and 32 roughly when I had my kids. And I remember after I was done having them, because I decided, I'm like, I don't want to do that again. I had two really difficult pregnancies. I was actually on bed rest for 3 months with Gabrielle. And so I didn't want to do that again if I didn't have to. So um, I remember looking in the mirror at my body after having two children back to back and really not having had a real exercise regimen up until then. And that was, I don't know if you can remember things like this, but I remember that moment looking in the mirror and thinking to myself, okay, this is a turning point. I'm either going to decide to get myself in shape, or this is just going to get worse and I'm just going to turn into a blobby, middle aged woman. I really thought that. And I was like, obviously at that point, I decided that I was not going to do that.
Well,
And
that's
that's
pretty
when,
clear. That's pretty clear that you
well,
decided.
that's when I decided to do that. Like I really didn't
Yeah, I feel
care
you.
about any of that before then.
Yeah, no, I feel you. And I think that's everybody's a little different, right? Like you were able to have self awareness and have foresight to be like, okay, if I do this, is the where I'm going to go. A lot of people don't do that. They just get stuck into being a certain way, and they get into a certain routine, and then it gets a little too late. I mean, it's there's certain, and we've talked about this before. I think there's certain basics, if you can kind of keep at least the basics in check, like go to the doctor, get a checkup every year, go to the dentist, do certain basic things, then you can kind of get ahead of things before it gets too far. I think, and I think a lot of people, when you're younger, you don't do that. You don't think about just the basics. It's not like you have to worry. It doesn't mean you have to be obsessed. Like, oh my god, I'm going to get sick. I mean, no, but just a basic check your baseline, so that in 5 years or in 10 years, they can be like, okay. We see a pattern here. We see this is where this is going, and based on now statistical data, okay, this is where this could go for you. Or like, no, based on this, you're in a good shape here, and this part's, or you may be great across everything. God bless you if you have those genes and you have that ability in your body processed that way. But it's better to kind of get ahead of it if you can. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep. All good here.
All good there? Is that it?
Yeah.
So for those of you who haven't met Steph, I can tell you unequivocally she did not go the blob route, and she still to this day is very active and definitely is very conscious and works on her health and works on her weight and works on being in shape and not in an obsessive way, but just in a very smart way that works for her. And I think it's something that anybody could learn from. I know I could, and I don't, so I just live. I work out vicariously through her, but
But you
yeah,
do have a protein shake every morning.
yeah.
So
I
that's
have I have a protein shake every morning. Look at me, I'm a fucking rock star. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Alrighty. Well, I think that's a wrap on those very light topics that we had this week, and I think it's time for rapid fire. My favorite, especially with the sound effects. I hope you like them too. All right, so I'm going to ask you these questions, and you're going to answer them, and then you're going to ask me these questions, and I may or may not answer them. Okay.
sounds good.
Okay. Overdressed or underdressed?
Overdressed.
Okay. First thing you pack in your bag.
So my question about this is what bag am I packing? Because
Pick
that
a
really
pick,
makes a
pick a
difference.
bag, not your purse. Pick a bag.
Not my purse.
Not-
Okay. First thing I'd pack in a suitcase bag to go away, I think would be my toiletries.
Okay. And computer bag.
Oh, my computer.
Okay, I mean, not everybody does it that way. So okay,
Okay.
most overhyped trend.
Most overhyped trend. I'm going to say protein. This is just on my head. We're always
Protein.
thinking about. I mean,
Yeah,
I literally was like eating a hard boiled egg. I wrapped that into a piece of turkey and then had some cottage cheese. Like psycho trying to get protein.
yeah. No comment on that. Okay, okay.
Okay, so back to you. Overdressed or underdressed?
Overdressed.
First thing you pack in your bag.
Um, so if it's a suitcase like for travel or whatever, it's actually usually like my pants because they lay because I'm so OCD about how organized and everything has to fit a certain way. So the pants have to kind of lay the base, and then I'm multitasking. Like I know what's going in, but I align it that way, and that's my base. And then
You are the most beautiful packer. Like, you really.
I appreciate that. And for computer bag, I do put the computer in first, but I'm ready for everything else to go in next. But the way my
Okay.
bag is now, it lines up best. And I didn't used to. Like when I had a different computer bag, I had to put the papers in first, and the computer went in last.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Last question. Most overhyped trend.
Every single trend that exists.
Okay.
I don't have one. I mean, protein was one that came to my mind as well, but that's of the moment.
Well,
Um,
I can tell you another one.
okay.
I don't know if you noticed this, but in New York City, it really does drive me crazy. Every single time I see a female or a male wearing this particular shape of a sunglass with these yellow or blue lenses. I've seen them all over TikTok and Instagram, and every time I see a real person wearing them, all I can think of was like you gave in to and ordered those damn sunglasses, and I see it all over the city, and it's like, oh my god, it drives me nuts.
I will tell you that in the past week or so, and if I haven't mentioned already, the weather's been really spectacular. Um, I've had the chance for a few different meetings to sit either outside or very close to outside, and I've noticed just the amount of just across the board fashion
Uh
of,
huh.
and I say fashion, I say that
Have you seen those sunglasses?
yes. When I say fashion, when I say fashion, let's put that into context here. So you are in the fashion world, and I've been very deeply in the fashion world in the past. I'm not per se anymore, but I have a decent sense of fashion. And when I say different types of fashion, I don't mean that they were fashionable. I
I
mean
know.
styles. I mean like holy shit, you actually wore that like outside to like the super coolest, chicest, whatever, to the like multicolored, fluorescent, whatever insanity, and like
Yeah.
different kinds of shoes. So I don't know if the trend is, I was wondering almost, I was thinking, it's like, is there a new trend of like dress as weird as you fucking can and see if anybody says anything trend? Because that's what it's felt like lately for me.
Well, I actually have seen a lot of things about New York Fashion Week, which just ended yesterday. And that was one of the things that I was hearing that people were like, New York Fashion Week had a different kind of energy where people were out, whether they were going to fashion events or not, but apparently the talk is that people are just walking around in the craziest get-ups. I think because it's New York Fashion Week.
Yeah,
I don't.
maybe. Maybe. Well, we'll see. Now that that's over, we'll see if it gets back to something else. But it's been a little
I
while.
mean, and I told you that I was down in the Lower East Side
Yeah,
on Saturday, and that place was hopping,
yeah,
and it was people were decked out in like,
Yeah, it's cool.
their fashion, and there were fashion shoots going on, and it was all a
Great.
lot of fashion happening here in the city.
It's New York City. That's what it's supposed to be. As long as New York City's so far, we're still around. So hopefully we can keep it going.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
all right. Well, thank you for being here this week. And until next week, thank you again for joining us on this week's episode of Pickles and Pasta with
Steph.
and Jay. Bye.